Well, as Pat has just told me, we're about to embark on state business this morning. And Pat, of course, is speaking from an igloo just beside the Atlantic and next door to America. Would that be correct, Pat?
Yeah. Yes, if you go about 20 miles up the road, the next parish is America, apparently, you know. By the
Is
way,
the
Jude,
snow
you
bad there,
just
Pat?
mentioned some of the. No, it's not bad. I think it was the east of the country got most of it.
Uh,
Usually, Donegal, when there's I've told you a million times, when there's a weather warning, whether it's for Far East Cork or whatever, Donegal is always included. Donegal
yes,
gets everything. You
yeah.
know,
I
every
saw
time
that.
climate
I
we get it.
assumed, I assumed you would be having a bad time because Donegal was included in the orange weather warning on
Yeah,
RT.
like Jude, even if it hits Dublin, the east of the country, and in Donegal, we get everything. But
Uh-huh.
anyway, no, Jude, actually the sun's shining and it's a beautiful morning now.
So if you were to walk out from your house now to the road, would you be
Uh,
walking through thick snow or
no, but I'd be walking through snow. It's
uh,
not thick. It's as we speak.
so you'd have to
Yeah,
have boots on or Wellingtons or something like that?
yeah. It is. In fact, Jude, no, there's no point in me. I'm not technically proficient, but if I turned this, you could see snow outside my front window.
Well, it's the same here, but it's not that bad. It's not really that bad. Bit of
Yeah,
sunshine
yeah,
cheers you up. Okay,
yeah.
let's go with a few things. One of the things that I mentioned as a possibility, Pat, was this thing of the um, Windsor framework, because somebody
Yeah.
contacted me and said, really, we should talk about that and make it clear as far as we can what exactly it is and why it's a good
Yeah.
deal. Because a lot of people are
Yeah.
vague on it. I'm not sure that's so, but anyway, do no harm, I suppose. Um, I'll give you
Yeah.
my understanding of the beginning of it anyway, and you can tell me what you think.
Yeah.
UK and the EU came to an agreement at Windsor, as it happens,
Yeah.
which was handy because then they could nip, Ursula von der Leyen could nip in next door to Charles III
Lawrence,
after.
yeah.
But they made
Yeah.
this agreement that they would operate the protocol in as smooth a way possible with green and red lanes. And they'd also have this thing called the storm and break, which meant that if
Yeah.
the EU brought in any new rules, that the Stormont Assembly would have a say in at least making those be put up to questioning by the
Yeah.
Assembly and by the UK Parliament. Does that roughly cover it, or is there more little
That's
things?
basically it. Right. The EU says there's only 3% of the original EU law, and they have to have that 3% because anywhere the European single market operates, the European Parliament has to have a say, and obviously, so basically they're saying that the deal between the EU and the UK obviates the need for all the basically the checks. And there, as we said a million times, the where the tectonic plates of the EU and the UK grind together is on the island of Ireland. So there has to be some checks, but they're now kept to a minimum. And they got rid of this. There's the red lane and there's the green lane. Green lane for goods coming from mainland UK into Ireland will not be subject other than perfunctory checks, to prevent smuggling and so on. And the ones with the red lane will be checked because they're going on to the Republic and on into the EU. And
Well,
it's the deal, and it's a deal that suits both Britain and the EU, whether
uh,
it suits unionism and all that.
how would you said perfunctory checks in the Green Lane? What did you in mind exactly?
Well, apparently, every so often they'll have to check to ensure that everybody's abiding by the rules.
Yeah, yeah, as you would in an airport if you were going out and you took
That's
nothing to declare. Uh,
they're checking. They already check things like cattle and so on as well. Dude, so it's not as if it hasn't happened before.
Yeah. There's a couple of little details here that I picked up as well. That is, if anything, this storm and break, if there was something of significant and lasting effect that was brought in by the EU that was going to affect the North here, that the
Yeah,
30 MLAs, and it wouldn't have to be for cross party, it could be all unionists, and probably would be all
yeah,
unionists, because I suspect that the nationalists and Republicans wouldn't tend to be objecting to new rules. But let's say that the 30 MLAs from the Ulster Unionists and the DUP objected to it, then over a 14-day period, they were supposed to think about it, and then they passed it to Westminster. And Westminster could decide, we'll block this, we'll not allow this to go through. If they do that, there's a further check, which I thought was very interesting. A further check, which is from the Assembly, and that has to be a cross-party majority. I thought that was very interesting. And if I was a unionist, that would make me a little bit alarmed, maybe. Am I overstating the case there, Pat?
Well, I think I think there's another possibility as well, isn't there? Some sort of independent arbitration as well before it gets back. But the other thing as well, there's a lot of checks and balances there, Jude, at the same time. In other words, if it goes back to the British Parliament, Westminster, I presume there are a lot of people going saying, "Oh, this is a legitimate objection," or "This is just purely sectarian, unionism, or maybe even nationalism." I don't know. So, I presume, and then the EU will also. I think the EU's role will be far. There'll be so many iron curtains in between the EU and all this procedure that it would be a court of last resort if it gets to the EU.
Yeah. So, in effect, from what we've said, it does seem that the Windsor framework is covered with all sorts of checks and protections, rather the word I should be using rather than checks. Protections. So it's actually a very good deal. And Rishi Sunak is right. I mean, there's another side to what Rishi said, but Rishi is right to say there is a fantastic opportunity here. In fact, we're in the north are at an advantage in some ways over the south in terms of having access to the UK market. So why are they?
Because the south doesn't have the access to.
They don't have access.
The
south doesn't have access to the UK market.
The UK market, which is the top biggest market in the world.
But why do you think the DUP are so intent on scratching their heads and saying, I don't like this, and this is awful, and Jim Alister saying that it's
there was a certain people years ago, I remember, they said put in a gold bar with the Dairy Journal, they would still hate the Dairy Journal. And I think there's a certain element on the unions, it's got nothing whatever to deal, and we all know it's got nothing to do with the deal. It's all about identity politics. I think Jeffrey Donaldson said he was willing to take a 40,000 job losses hit for Brexit. Now, that's nice for Jeffrey, but if I was down in Ballymena and I lost my job because of Brexit and my family opportunities and prospects and development fell by the wayside, I might think different. But there are people in unionism, like you were back to the Jamie Brysons and the Jim Alister. Jim Alister has basically said no matter what deal's on the table, he's not for it.
But the DUP must be a bit nervous. They wouldn't be so slow to go back into Stormont or object to the protocol if they didn't believe that the majority of unionists out there felt the same way. They're taking their cue from the public, surely.
Well, I presume there's a lot of stuff going on in the background. But Jude, let's get this clear. This is I was going to use a rude term, but this is do the business or get off the pot, because I said before, the EU's in favour of this, the UK's in favour of this, Dublin's in favour of this, the Americans are in favour of this, Sinn Féin, Alliance, SDLP, possibly some even unionists. So the DUP, it'll be really, really big time if they go against this, because I think what they'll gain, they might win this particular battle, which I even doubt about that, but they're certainly going to lose the war.
I see where there's talk about the DUP agreeing to a speaker being appointed and sort of inching their way back, taking it in stages of moving back into the assembly. Did you see that?
I'm not hear that, Jude, but that wouldn't surprise me, because there was somebody on one of the programs some time ago and said, remember, let's get this clear, the DUP has never officially signed up to the Good Friday Agreement, but they still went into Stormont.
Oh, yeah.
Give them the
and the money.
to ride two horses. Well, no,
You know.
we never agreed to this, But anyway, and Jim Allister's the same, by the way. Just as a putting it on the record, wasn't in favour of Good Friday, but he still went into the assembly.
And of course, as you pointed out in an email, Theresa May's deal would have been any need for all of this. You would have
None
had
of this
all of
would
the
have happened.
UK
And by the way, Jude, there is karma. None of this, no, the backstop and the protocol and all that sort of the big difficulty of all that would have, been sorted had they allowed Theresa May's deal, which covered basically all of the UK, and there would have been no sort of division or hiving off Northern Ireland. But they pulled Theresa May out of a meeting about 12 o'clock when she was ready to sign with the EU at 1 o'clock. The British Prime Minister had been pulled out by a couple of unionists. Jude, karma.
I wonder, the thing that's motivating, I think, the DUP and a lot of unionist voters too, presumably, is this notion of sovereignty. That the UK should be sovereign. And that's what was behind Brexit itself. Like, it wasn't simply that they weren't getting good deals. They were, because Britain prospered, I think, under the EU or within the EU, but they felt that there was an infringement of their sovereignty. But that puzzles me too, because anytime it's a sort of an equivalent thing. If you do a deal and there's all sorts of goods that you're getting into that other country or other area without any taxes and so on, then you have to equally weigh that with some rules obtaining with regard to stuff coming into your country. It stands to sense. There's no such thing as a sovereign state in that sense, except you want to be in splendid isolation and your people eating grass.
Yeah. Well, Jude, one of my old bosses, he owned one of the papers I worked for him years ago, and he says, "Look, Paddy," he says, "I don't care if I spend £100 as long as I get 101 back." Like, Jude,
That sums it up.
Well, the unionists thought the same, and Britain did the same. Britain was doing very well in the EU, and had a lot of influence. It was a big player within the EU, and they were in the biggest bloc in the world for trade, and so on. But Jude, let's get this clear. A lot of what was sent back to the Brits and appealed to them is taking back control. We have this idea, and it's a very easy sell. Britain's a very conservative society. They look up to the old the royal family and the old colonels and so on. We won 2 world wars. No, you didn't. The Americans and the Russians won 2 world wars. But anyway, let's go on. And there's this sort of arrogance that we used to Britannia ruled the world type thing. And there's a legacy of that. And by the way, some of the most decent English people, and I've met them. But there's a mentality of this sort of thing, and it's written of some sort of bygone era that they believe that they shouldn't be taking orders from the Krauts or the Frogs, and that's the mentality. And I've met quite a few with that mentality.
Yeah, I think you've got a point there, and it certainly does have an effect in some English people with regard to how they regard the Irish people.
I'm being careful. I think I did say some, and not all.
Aye, that's true. But in a way, you'd almost have to feel sorry for those people because, just as you and I are nationalist or Republican, perhaps because of our background as well as our own thinking, likewise, many Englishmen or English people are the way they are and have those attitudes you've described because that's how they were brought up and their history. You see, this is a country. Great Britain is a country that once was truly great. I mean, I don't know when you were in school, but that we had on the wall maps where the British Empire was in pink all over the world. My God, the amount of countries that they ruled. And then, it's like the Catholic Church in a way, and its influence in Ireland. It just suddenly the whole thing collapsed, and the empire fell apart. And as a result, you see, I think the English population, the British population are sitting, scratching in their heads and wondering what happened there and what can we do now? It's difficult. It's not easy. I think we should be more sympathetic maybe than we are.
That's a matter of opinion.
Well, I meant to say after they leave Ireland.
Yeah, exactly. That was going through my head when you said that. No, look, we could probably kick on this to death, but see, after 1945, and the Americans come in with a Marshall Plan for Germany.
Yes.
And suddenly, I think the English sat back and watched the Germans in the space of about 30 years surpass them. Mercedes-Benz, BMW, you name it, all the big Volkswagen. The German economy within a couple of years was, I think, the second, if not the first main economy in the world, and most profitable. They totally industrialized. They built these big roads, and they became a massive powerhouse in Europe. And I think there's a sort of some sort of jealousy on the part of a lot of the elite in Britain, or the ruling class, that look what these guys are at. But Jude, there's a lot of reality checks starting to kick in. Even I noticed there's a detectable change in tone in some Tories. They want closer alliances with the EU, and even there's something going, isn't it, on today? Britain and France on these joint manoeuvres. But I can't even remember. I saw it last night on the news. And Rishi Sunak, Jude, most definitely wants a deal. He's a pragmatist. He realizes where Britain is going, and if he wants to get re-elected, he's got to get Britain back on an even keel. And he's going to sell. Look, we have restored relations with the EU. We've got a good deal on this. Our economics. He's going to try and sell everything he can. He's got about 18 months to do it.
Well, I was saying earlier that the DUP were, there seem to be signs that they might be, by degrees, inching their way back into Stormont. That they would, go with the speaker being elected, and then they'd move on from there gradually. Would the same thing be applying, do you think, to the British government and re-entry into the EU? Would they be inching their way back?
No. What do you call him? Starmer. It won't even let his MPs mention Brexit, or it's a done deal and all the rest of it. Now, Jude, he is so, and I have to be careful of my language.
You're not shocked, me, Pat. There's only two others listening to you anyway.
I mean, he's so scared, Jude. He is not. He's about 30 points up in the polls, and he's scared shitless of losing it. And he's not going to do anything about Brexit. He's not going to frighten the horses. And Brexit's a done deal. The country has voted, and we're not going to touch it, even if it's a non-mitigated disaster. But Jude, maybe somebody down the track will have more guts than he has.
Well, maybe when he would be elected, he would do things that you wouldn't have ever suspected him of doing. The same as Tony Blair. Tony Blair used to be a sort of a joke when he got in, that he wouldn't do anything except there was a focus group that had been set up first to tell him what to do, what way the wind was blowing. And then the next thing, he invaded Iraq on the back of protests, the likes of which were never seen in Britain. So
a million people
office can change a man.
Absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'm agreeing with you. Like a million people went through the centre of London protesting against the war, and it was a disaster for Blair. That's part of his legacy, and you can see it in his face that he realizes it was one massive mistake.
Yeah, but you see, the point would be that there was such a difference between that and the vacillating, give me a focus group, Tony Blair before that. So the same thing could apply to Starmer.
Yeah.
Same thing could apply to Starmer. He might, get some lead in his pencil, or be sort of backbone whenever he get it. Although, we could go on about him. Anyway, your central point, I think, was the big one was the DUP could have Britain could have had this deal for everybody in the UK, and there'd be no problem. But the DUP told Theresa May, "Don't you dare," and that was it. It's a funny old world. Okay,
that was it.
Let's move to the subject of Gary Lineker, the man of the moment, a man of enormous wealth. Well, not really, no. As a footballer, he'd be making this kind of money every month, but in fact, he has to wait a year to earn 1.3 million pounds. But he has upset a lot of people. Do you want to give me your thoughts on the upset he's caused and what he should have?
Yeah, well, Jude, I think it only moves the political class in Britain. It took a footballer to say what most decent people think, that what the Tory party have gone sort of totally right wing, and the whole idea that anybody comes across in a channel on a small boat doing it for the fun, where they, and so on, that their attitude towards just refugees and asylum seekers is despicable, absolutely despicable. They take the least number of refugees in all of Europe. their attitude towards we're going to send them to Rwanda, etc., etc., etc. And Gary Lineker pointed out something that he said the language, by the way, and a lot of the Tories are deliberately misleading. He said the language, he didn't say the actions, he said the language of the Tory party was very similar to that of Germany in the 1930s, Jude. And if you check it out, Jude, it is exactly the language of the 1930s in Germany. You know, blame the other for all our economic difficulties, for all what's going wrong, etc., 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 and so on. I know, and I saw last night on Question Time, the Tory guy, Janik, or what he trying to suggest that that was ridiculous, and Ken Clark's the same, that that what he said, the actions of the British government, the democratic British government, doesn't compare to the Nazis. He didn't say the actions; it was the words he said, and the words are the same.
Yeah, it's very interesting whenever the Nazis are mentioned. They didn't even mention Nazis. He talked about 1930s Germany. Once it's mentioned, then everything else goes out the window. Nobody said, "Well, what did you? What do you mean by saying that? What are you getting at when you say it's like 1930s Germany?" Nobody responded to what he said. It's just that guy said 1930s Germany, disgusting. And you had any number of Jewish organizations and Jewish MPs lining up to say how awful this was.
Like it's a taboo subject. You cannot mention it was like 1930s, because nothing's like 1930s. That is bullshit. The words that the Germans use as eerily similar to what the Tory party is saying. Blame the coming in from abroad. Blame the refugees. That they're causing all our ills. They're causing all the crime. They're taking our jobs. Jude, that's the same language.
Well, you see, that I thought immediately when I heard about it, I thought of Mary McAleese. Do you remember the time Mary McAleese said that unionists were brought up to, some unionists were brought up to hate Catholics, rather like the Germans had been brought up to hate Jews. Do you remember that? And all hell broke loose.
I remember that.
Is that a parallel case, or do you think Lineker's is on a different track, really?
Well, I'm not as sure. Remember Cardinal Lafite said Catholic would kill you for your politics and Protestant would kill you for your religion. I don't know if that's still true as well. I know, Jude, there's a lot of, back in the day, there's no doubt about it, there was a lot of discrimination on our part of the world, simply on the basis of religion. But I think what Lineker's getting at is saying, look, there's so many decent English people out here who are ashamed of of how far right wing the Tory government is going, and it took someone. Isn't it amazing? Cameron said all the rest of it took a footballer to sort of prick the conscience. And Judy, apparently, and I hope it's true, that he's getting a massive level of support from ordinary decent English people. I think the Tory party attacking Gary Lineker. I remember reading a story years ago about Kirk Douglas and back in the 60s attacking Walt Disney, and and he realised halfway through it, I'm just ruining my own reputation here. It's like attacking Santa Claus.
Yeah. Do you like Gary Lineker? Do you like him?
I do, actually. I do. He's a very a number of things he said. He's sort of like the Jeremy Corbyn of the broadcasting world. He's got the courage to stand up and say that. Jude, he knows the consequences, that he could easily lose his job. But like they asked him yesterday, do you withdraw? He says certainly not. He presents most of the sporting programs. He's paid 1.3 million. He's got serious influence in sporting circles and so on, and he could lose that in the morning. But at least he's got the courage to say it, and he's not withdrawing it.
Mm-hmm. Do you see any? You seem to. I think you hinted at the notion that the Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman, the fact that they come from an Asian background, might have been a factor in the sort of heated, dogged rejection of immigrants.
Yeah, someone knows Stockholm syndrome. You become someone when so.
Patricia, Patty Hearst going into a bank with a submachine gun.
Stockholm I, and I remember reading the story of the German, the Nazi who was who he discovered that his grandmother was Jewish, and he was an SS officer. I can't remember his name now, and he became the most efficient Jew hater in the SS. Jude, there's something I find disturbing that Braverman and Rishi Sunak are leading the British government's unbelievably despicable, I used that term earlier on, attack on refugees and asylum seekers. There's something that doesn't sit well with me. It's almost as if they want to please the old white elite. Look, we're tough on these brown people coming here. Like these people are not, most of them coming on boats are not white skinned. They're people of color. And to see Braverman and Rishi Sunak sort of joining the lynch mob of the old sort of colonels, I actually think it's disturbing, and I think there's something not right about that.
You think it's maybe an effort to show that they're sort of more Tory than the Tories themselves, in case they'd be seen as
that's exactly where I'm coming from on this. Yeah.
sort of like a
Jude, I presume Braverman and Sunak's people came over to England as refugees of some kind back in the day. So now we close down the doors and put up barriers at the White Cliffs of Dover.
Well, you see, it's. I tend to think of it in terms of how they see themselves in relation to the people who are part of their party, rather than their views on immigrants as such. I'm thinking that when I think back now, no names, no pack drill, but the few nationalist / Catholic people who would have been in the media, let's say, apart from, say, the Irish News, who would have been in the media in the north here, they did have, if it was mainstream media, they did have it, like the BBC and so on. In my opinion, they had a tendency to be very, very discreet and very, very, dare I say, in quotation marks, unionist in the way they presented themselves.
Yeah.
Is that am I seeing demons there where they don't exist?
No, Jude, I think to be part of the herd, sort of assimilate, and you want to sort of be part of the crowd. You don't want to be set aside. And I'm not using any names. In the past, I used to notice that some people or the nationalists of our nationalist background almost became unionists, and they were, rather than say Derry. In fact, there's a certain and you used to say Londonderry, and I used to say, why in under Jesus are you saying Londonderry? You never heard it in your life growing up. By the way, there used to be, and I'll name him, a guy called Jim Lindsay. He was from the unionist background, and he was new to BBC Radio 4 years ago. I said, Jim, why are people, using Londonderry? He says, Pat, every time I hear the word Londonderry, I always think there's a prod politician on the make. In other words, he says, because he admitted amongst themselves, they never used the word Londonderry.
Yes, that's true. There was only one thing I ever heard Londonderry used when I was a kid, and when I was in St. Columns for 6 years, I never heard Londonderry except in that thing that went, what was it, something Cork and Kerry, spell that without a K. What, do you remember that little rhyme they had? Londonderry, Cork. I was at Londonderry, Cork and Kerry, spell that without a K. THAT is the answer.
Yeah.
Okay, just we've only a few minutes left, but let's devote them to no less a man than Stephen Nolan. You watched his show on Wednesday night, was it? Aye.
Yeah.
Wednesday night, and I watched, because I go to bed early, I watched the recording of it last night. And you noted something about the guests that he had.
Yeah. Jude, I just I mean, he got on a priest. I'm working on the basis that at this stage, both the Sinn Féin are boycotting him, and I think the SDLP might have taken a decision to stand back this week, whether they do in the future. But I was saying, what's a Catholic priest doing on the panel of Nolan? And then it occurred to me, he probably can't get any nationalist politician to come on. The priest, the guy, I think he was the guy.
McAleese. The man who did the... Remember he gave a homily at the funeral of Blair McAleese.
Yeah. The service. So I was thinking, what's he doing on? And then I realised Now I know I was an SDLP guy. I was yesterday or the day before. He said they have made a complaint, as far as he's aware, to the BBC about Nolan. But what I know whether they go ahead any further. Dude, I didn't realize this. Apparently, there was a petition of 20 signed by 25,000 people. I presume most of them nationals about Nolan. Are you aware of that?
No, didn't know about that. What exactly was it? There
I
was
didn't know that.
were they saying he was
No,
coming
this is
across too
this is
unionist?
some time ago.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I think so.
what was that? How did
Yeah.
they phrase their objection?
I can't really say. I just read that yesterday somewhere in social. And by the way, I can't stand over it. Said somebody mentioned the fact this is not the first time. It said that there was a petition some years ago saying about 25,000 people. Now, Jude, I am not standing over that. But Jude, the question comes back all the time. It was on social media yesterday, so I'm throwing it at you. How come these so-called unelected people, and they went, no, they pointed at Nolan's unelected, Jamie Bryson's unelected, David Campbell's unelected. There was four. I can't remember what the fourth
Well,
one
the priest
was.
wasn't
How
elected.
come they're given? No, how come these people are given such prominence on the BBC?
Well, I think, Pat, it's because it's a simple matter. I think for Nolan, it's rather dangerous. There's no the DUP will not appear on his shows. It seems. I'm trying to think of the last time I heard somebody. No, I don't think I can remember the last time that the DUP person was on. I haven't seen a Shinner on any of his shows for ages and ages and ages. Now, those are the two main parties, like it or lump it, those are the two main parties here. Now, if you're running a political talk show and your two main parties are boycotting your show, that's, I mean, to be honest, that's if that maintains, your whole below the waterline, I don't think that will be sustained. Do you think, or will he get away with it?
No, you see, I think he's adopted the Fox News approach. That it's controversy, he'll keep him going irrespective of who doesn't. Like a lot of the Democratic people in America wouldn't go on Fox News, but they still spew out, that it's how accurate or how this is entertainment.
Yeah. Have you, by the way, seen GB News?
No.
Have
you?
I have. Yeah, I looked at it there over the last couple of days.
Excuse me, didn't you get an invite to appear on it?
I did. I didn't say yes and I didn't say no, but they haven't come back to me. So I suspect that the red mist has departed and they realised they shouldn't have done that. But anyway,
by the way, Jim, they lost £30 million in their first year of operation. But go ahead.
That's what my wife was saying, and I can see why. I watched it yesterday, and who was on? Your man, Nigel Farage. Oh, God.
Aye.
Oh,
it's a totally right-wing station.
Oh, God, it was painful.
They've offered Arlene Foster and Nigel Farage. They've offered Jacob Rees-Mogg a show as well.
He's got a show. He's got a big, long show immediately after Farage. It's the Fox News. It's the Fox News of this side of the Atlantic. Okay, we're out of time, Pat. That's terrible. Get your shovel, get out into your driveway and clear a path for your wife. For God's sake, don't just sit there.
To freedom.
Can I compliment you on your jersey? Very, very nice.
Okay. Thanks very much. Bye, Jude.
Okay, all the best.
Good luck.
All the best.